Hello and welcome to the Dash Podcast. I am your host, Trey Gamage, and this is a special episode sponsored by the Gamage Consulting Group. We help middle school principals support student behavior. If you're interested in help with your SEL programs or building relationships with your students, I need you to go to treygamage.com/shop right now to sign up for a time to talk, have a conversation, and see if we can solve your problem. Now, joining me today is Mr. Linford Molaodi. He was an educator, or a K-12 as we call it over here in the States, educator for about 4.5 years, but has now changed to the higher education realm, teaching teachers how to use technology in early education. Linford is joining us all the way from South Africa, and we want to welcome you to the Dash Podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is real exciting. Again, shout out to Chris Reese, or Brian Reese, as some other folks may know him. I think he's the one that put me in contact with you. So I'm glad we've had a chance here to connect and have a conversation. And I'm really curious about what the education system is like over in South Africa.
Oh, yeah. It's an interesting kind of an education system.
Yeah. How was so you were teaching for about 4.5 years. What got you involved or wanting to be an educator?
I believe I'm from a very rural area, and my background wasn't really that glowy. Okay. My hardship taught me to help other people. And when I graduated from high school, I wanted to get into a career that will give me opportunities to help the people that are disadvantaged back home.
Yeah. That's I think that's so powerful. Listen, I feel like that's why most people get into education. I was actually just thinking myself today about why I got into education myself and why I got into politics. I'm a city council member, and the first thing that came to mind when I was just talking in my head was, I saw a deficit for people that look like me, and I felt like I could play a part in changing that narrative for people of color, for Black people, and just wanted to make sure that I was doing my part. And I know you were teaching for 4 years in schools. Why did you make that transition to the higher education ranks?
I'm a fan of skills multiplicity, and I run a lot of projects across the country. So when I went into teaching, I had more passion into teaching high school students, and it went really amazing. And the results actually made me famous to such an extent that I was involved in science committee. I was the head of science committee in a particular area. So I was training teachers on how to teach science. Okay. And then as time developed, I developed an interest in teaching with technology. Then I taught my learners with technology, and when they went out to the communities, they started talking about me and things that I did. So the Department of Education and local teachers started getting interest in the work that I did. So I started getting more involved into training teachers. And then it went up. I developed interest into training teachers than teaching learners, you know. So it went up. And then, so this year I was given an award in a national teaching award in South Africa, in excellence in teaching with technology inside the classroom.
Wow.
So, and then I think that gave me quite more reputation. And then an opportunity opened at higher education so they looked at my work. So they gave me an opportunity to be able to, to mold teachers, into teaching with technology at a very larger scale. Because when I was in the basic education, I could only reach few, but now I have a chance to prepare teachers while they're still in service at the university level. So I just developed an interest along the way into teaching teachers on how to teach with technology.
Yeah. I mean, you're hitting so much right now. I feel like we're kind of connected a little bit. I feel like that's so important. You know, it's one thing to impact your classroom. And I talk a lot to students about success versus significance. And success is when you're able to achieve something for yourself, when you're able to build a successful classroom or have, results, like you said, that made you famous. But significance goes beyond that, and it's when you're able to help somebody else come along that path as well. So I feel like training teachers,
yes.
you mentioned skills multiplicity. So I'm not sure if that's just literally multiplying the skills that people have, or if that's a concept that you're using in education. But I think that's amazing, because when you get to train a teacher, they get to impact entire classrooms themselves. So that 20 people that you're teaching or 40 people that you're teaching multiplies or compounds to hundreds and thousands of kids that are being impacted by the work that you're doing.
Oh yeah, by skills multiplicity, I mean, as a teacher also, or as a young individual, you shouldn't get stuck into one mode of operation or one area of interest. So, in the context of, we are in an environment that keeps on changing. So when it changes, we need to change with things. So we need to explore quite lots of things, so that when there are some sort of changes in the society, and we can change along with them. So I saw, I developed interest. I was a science teacher. I was teaching chemistry and physics, but at the same time, I've actually improved my skills on how to teach with technology, or how to use technological tools. So I've developed other skills more, and then developed more skills into how to teach teachers than teaching learners. That is how I've actually found myself, and I found myself as a multi-skilled individual who can be able to maneuver through different situations. And where there is greater need, again, it's where I actually get involved. When I see social problems, that's where I get involved. And in 2015, South Africa embarked into a movement into installing smart boards into classroom in one of our countries, province, Gauteng. And it's still a problem that many teachers still don't know how to use technology.
Wow.
And even the young teachers that are coming into the system still have some sort of difficulty into utilizing the tools that exist. So it was an opportunity for me to venture into and to try to help.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting. So I'm curious, what when you're talking technology, what technology are you guys using and implementing? I hear you saying smart boards. Is there any other way? And that's and if you can elaborate on the problems that teachers are having with those smart boards, understanding or training, or just how to mix it in with classroom instruction. And is there any other technologies that you guys are using?
Oh yes, I did a lot of trainings, within my organization, TESTEL project. So what I did when I developed this organization was to help teachers utilize technology. And as you say, I said that I operated in rural villages where there's not much of those smart boards. So I came up with a concept, shoestring ICT. Shoestring information communication technology. Okay. Now, the shoestring part is a term that we use to describe improvisation, using what you have to make it work. It actually emerges from science. As I was a science teacher, I was a fan of shoestring science. In other words, if we are in an area where there's no traditional scientific apparatus, but still we need to achieve the goal of learning and teaching. What is it that we get from our bathrooms, our kitchens, to ensure that the learners that are based in schools that are more advantaged with resources still get, the learners that are in advantaged areas are at the same level in terms of knowledge with those that are in disadvantaged areas. So we improvise. And then I coined a concept of improvisation with technology. So that's the reason I said there is shoestring science. Now, what I did with shoestring science was I used I taught teachers on how to use the cell phones, because many of our learners have cell phones. So I taught them how to use cell phones, to make learning more interesting, even when they don't have data projectors or smart boards. For instance, in one of my master's thesis, I did research on how to use the mobile technology app WhatsApp, in how to, we used it we use it to improve rural learners' career conceptions. So what I did was, since the learners are based in geographically isolated areas where they cannot meet people from different career fields, I actually contacted people from different universities and different countries to be guests in my WhatsApp group, which I had with the rural learners, so that when the rural learners get out of the high school, they already have an idea of what being a doctor means, what being a chemical engineer or mechanical engineer means, because we find that the learners based in rural areas end up selecting careers at higher education without understanding the nature of those careers, and that may contribute to the high failure rate that we have in the universities at the first year level. So I wanted to bridge the gap with those learners. So, and then we also use Zoom as we use it now to teach, for inter-school team teaching. I also use quite a number of apps, like ScreenLib, for instance, to ensure that we still get the same quality of teaching and learning even though we do not have data projectors. Yeah, so that is what I'm all about. But a lot of the work that I do can actually be found on my Facebook, because I share a lot of things on Facebook.
Okay. So I need to add you on Facebook. I saw you on LinkedIn. I'm looking in the wrong places, man. This is really good stuff. And it's I think what's really interesting is the problems that you're facing are the same things we're facing in America, specifically with rural education, the lack of exposure. When you're in a bigger city, your kids tend to be overexposed. They see too much. They're exposed to too much. But when you're in a rural, isolated, disadvantaged area, they don't see enough. There's no economy. There's nothing going on around them for them to be able to understand what's outside of the area that they're in. So that's a really special place to work. And I feel like in a lot of ways, the students that are in rural areas are even more disadvantaged in some ways than folks that may be in a more city type of area, because we don't really think about rural education very often. I honestly didn't even hear about it until I moved to a rural landscape. Were you born into the same kind of situation that you're teaching in, or did you have a more diverse experience growing up?
Well, I was born and raised in a rural village, so I know the kind of challenges that people in the rural villages experience from the first hand.
Okay. And now going from you mentioned I feel like you gave me the background just now of all the work that you've been doing. So can you talk some about the results that you've achieved, all these things that have made you so famous in South Africa and internationally, the results that you've gotten from some of the projects you've been working on?
All right, yeah. So I think the most important thing was my organization, TESOL Projects. It opened up a lot of opportunities. So when I started using WhatsApp in the rural village to teach learners, even when they were not inside the classroom, because during the day I would go to school, then after in the evening I would teach them using WhatsApp, so that those that may have not understood the content of my lessons may ask more questions and learners can be able to interact and collaborate, which was actually something that was done for the first time in the community. And then parents and learners started appreciating that and started making me famous outside, because they were like, there's this teacher who does some things. And, many of the schools are banning cell phones. So learners are not allowed to bring cell phones into the schools. And parents do not allow learners to be on social media because they believe that it's destructive. So I called parents and actually talked to them about the advantages of using social media platforms, and they saw me doing it. So I actually contributed towards conceptual change, that social media isn't just something that's destructive. It's destructive when you do not use it sufficiently. Right. So as a teacher, I found a new way to utilizing these social media platforms into being educational platforms. So it gave me a name, and again, with shoestring science, it's a concept which I advocated for in the rural villages. So I did quite lots of projects with teachers and learners. They were inspired by the way I was using simple tools to make learning more interesting. For instance, we have concepts of intermolecular forces in high school. We have concepts of electromagnetic waves in high school and things like that. So in order to demonstrate those things, in most cases you need traditional Western traditional scientific apparatus, but we don't have them in the rural villages. So what I would do is I would mix we call it liquid soap with water, and then spray in an air freshener, and then start to light it up. And then the kids would now see a flame going up. And then the question would come, why is there a flame? And I would be having that flame on my hand, because afterwards I stare up and have the foam onto my hand and then burn my hand. They would see my hand burning, but then I don't actually feel the heat. That's where learning starts. And then I would also be suspending cell phones, electromagnetic waves by actually covering it up with a foil. And I would tell them, this is how, or I would engage them on how devices are not being found when they are lost. And they'll be like, the device has a tracker, or the car has a tracker, but we cannot track it. It's because of the waves have been suspended. And I engage them in activities that would actually help them into trying to understand what is actually going on and what contribution can they bring into the world. I mean, we do not have lots of light bulbs to portray functional electric circuits. And then I used to use the application called FET simulation, to portray how electric generation is actually taking place, and then ask them questions on how they could actually mold the electric generation, procedures to ensure that we become, environmentally friendly and things like that. And those things are actually the ones that made me more famous, because I help teachers at the same time helping learners, and I've got a team that works on this project. So the results have been quite amazing. They've been quite great. And last year I actually won an award into being South African Man of the Year in the category of science and technology. And then recently in June, I've just been afforded an accolade of being Male and Guardian Young South Africans in the category of education. So I was in the top 200 young South Africans.
Wow. Wow. So you really are famous, man. It's a privilege for you to be on the show today.
Thank you very much.
No, that's absolutely amazing. One of the things I want to know, Linford, or just your thought on this, where does your drive come to keep on pushing like this? You were not satisfied with just working in the classroom. You were not satisfied with the deficit, and it sounds like you have an amazing drive to make something happen, to bridge the gap, as we like to say. Where does that come from? And is that something that you're born with? Or is that something that we can teach our teachers to have, that kind of drive?
Well, it comes to the question of whether teaching is a calling or not. I don't believe in describing, careers as a calling or whatsoever, because, a career can be a calling, but it can also be nurtured, because in high school, our teachers would always say, you can never be a teacher, you can never be a doctor, and things like that. Looking at some of the characteristics that we are having. But as time progresses, we develop as things change. A person is being molded again by the environment in which they live in. If I move from one area to another, I might develop new interests and new skills, and as a result, might pursue a particular career in which I'm passionate. And that wouldn't mean I was born with that capacity, but I was just shaped by the environment. So what happened was, just like any other person, I just did teaching, just as a teacher, without having greater understanding of what teaching entailed. But then when I got into teaching, now I helped, my first group when I started teaching was in 2015, and I saw how they appreciated the work that I was doing. I was just helping at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have much drive. I was just trying to help. Then as I helped, I saw the change happening into the kids. Parents came and started praising the work that I did. And then they graduated from high school and they went into the universities. They came back and told me, the kind of impact that I made. And that actually made me, look important, because I had some sort of inferiority complex into the work that I did. But then as they came back and said, you know what, you have helped and we wish you could help more, then I started now developing confidence into the work that I did. And then, I helped more. Then as I helped more went out to the university. They came back and they were like, you are really a source of inspiration. So I inspired more. I even inspired the teachers. And then I started having, lots of teachers as my proteges, and then I had learners as well as my proteges. So these learners or these students, as they graduate from high school, they get into the university. My relationship with them continued, and more of them now are starting to become part of my organization. And, and then now I'm unable to stop what I'm doing because there are a lot of people looking up to me, So I think that is what's driving me into doing more, because there are people that are looking up to me and I cannot give up despite all the challenges. Every time when something kicks me down and I feel sad, they will always say, look, this is where you've come from. This is what you did to us, and nobody can ever stop you along the way. You need to continue. When I'm down, I look at what I've done before and then I keep on moving, because I didn't want... I've been mentoring people on how to overcome challenges. And then now I'm the one, experiencing those challenges. I always feel like, look, it will make me look like a hypocrite if I don't conquer this. Let me just continue,
Right. What do you feel like are some of the greatest obstacles in front of you moving forward, whether that's internal, from a personal standpoint, or externally?
Well, internally, I feel very important. I don't want to lie. And, it molded my self-perception, and it molded the way I look at the world. Like, I'm only 27 years old, and, quite a number of people told me that, since I was about 21, 22, they've been seeing a change in me. They knew that I was born sort of, I had those leadership skills, and I was learning to develop into something that is great. So now my thinking capacity has actually surpassed people of my age. My responsibility, and so internally, I could say, I've developed into being a responsible young adult, because there are lots of people looking up to me. Yeah.
Well, shoot, I need to keep up with you then. You got about a year on me. I'm 26, so it's a really special thing to... I feel like this is something that we have to do more often.
Yes.
Particularly as like Black educators in America. I don't know what the statistics are in South Africa, but here only 2% of educators are Black males. And
Whoa.
I couldn't imagine how many, I don't know how many the total is male and female, but there's not many Black male educators. So anytime I get an opportunity to speak to another African American male that's in education, it's literally inspiring to me. And I know that I have someone that I can reach out to and talk to about any challenge that I'm facing in education, and just feel comfortable reaching out to somebody else that looks like me, because that's something that I don't see often.
Oh, yes. And one of the things, before I forget to mention, the idea of opening up my own NGO was actually planted at Peachtree. I don't know if I still remember the street, Peachtree Street in Atlanta downtown, next to. I forgot the name of the hotel. It's just next to the Underground Mall, opposite to the MARTA train station. So as I was working there in 2014, so when I was still doing my undergrad at the University of Johannesburg, they had a student exchange program with Georgia State University. And as I was walking down the street, I've just developed an idea after I've seen how the passion of a lot of American teachers. I admired the way teachers in America invest a lot in education, especially in the early childhood. So I admire them, and I told my professors that when I arrive at home, I'm actually going to develop something. It won't be the same as the organizations that we have in America, but I'm just going to convert quite a number of things, in order to ensure that my organization serves the needs of my community. And Dr. Julie Washington and Professor Gwen Benson were there when I said all these things, and they've been supporting me since the beginning of my organization until even now. Every year they actually come to South Africa to attend events of my organization in the rural villages.
That's pretty cool. I think you get exposed to a lot of things. I have a quick history lesson on that Peachtree Street, but before I do, I want to acknowledge what you were just saying as well. I'm learning so much more right now. I'm with you. I feel like you're just saying many things that I'm thinking or just realizing myself, and it's kind of taking me aback a little bit also. I didn't realize how many second or third party education organizations there are that support and that are willing to support and trying to support kind of the foundational principles of education. So that's a really special thing. And I also want to just connect you with some history to Peachtree Street in Atlanta, because there's a book, you may have heard of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Have you heard of that one?
I have heard of it, but I haven't read it.
And that's fine. It's there's a version of that made by Dennis Kimbrough, and it's called Think and Grow Rich: A Black Choice. And it's the same book, but it just lists African American references. So Peachtree Street is actually where Alonzo Herndon, who was born a slave in Georgia, he moved to Atlanta for a better opportunity as a barber. And he started off just cutting clippers, he started off cutting hair with just the clippers in his basement at his home, ended up working his way up to Peachtree Street, downtown Atlanta in the early 1800s. He may have been 20 or 30 years old. And his barbershop grew into what was known across the world as the most beautiful barbershop in the world. It had marble ceilings, it had hot tubs. There was a full service barbershop downtown Atlanta owned by this Black man. They had bathtubs, they had facial scrubs, they had massages. It was just a full service grooming situation. He ultimately ended up becoming one of the first African-American millionaires in the United States and started a life insurance company that grew to be like $140 million business. So that thought that you had may very well have been a thought that was from ancestors of, Peachtree Street, and just a connection with some of the things that went on, over 120 years ago in that area. So I think that's the value of exposure right there. We're talking about the rural settings to bring it full circle. You talk about connecting folks via WhatsApp. And so that experience that you had in Atlanta on Peachtree Street connects you, it exposes you to so many things that maybe you would not have had the opportunity to see before. So the fact that you're able to create that opportunity for students using the resources that you already have is a really special thing to be able to do.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I just had to share that with you. That was the first
Thank
thing
you.
that came to mind when you said that. So I may send you a link to that book or a copy of it, something like that.
Please do.
And so
Please.
I was thinking also, talking about this education stuff. I know, we have the federal government that subsidizes education. I think the state as well. And then you've got Title I programs. But a lot of the money is distributed based on income tax. So, for example, there's a 200-mile stretch where I live here in South Carolina where the majority, over 80% of the population is a minority, people of color, and 88% of those people live in poverty. And since the income taxes is how schools are funded, the schools are very poor. The resources are very limited. The opportunities are very scarce. How do you fund education in South Africa?
Can you just repeat that question?
How is education funded in South Africa?
Oh, okay. We have the public school. Public schools are fully funded by the government, so we don't pay school fees in South Africa. Okay. But the taxpayers' money is being used to fund the schools. Okay. The public schools, if I could say. And then those people who decide to take their kids to the private schools, then they pay quite a lot of money by themselves. But when you take a kid to public school, you don't have to pay a cent, including some of the resources like textbooks and stationery. But all the monies are actually coming from taxpayers' money. So everyone pays tax,
Okay, I got you. So tell me, Linford, going into, you're teaching this year, what are some of the goals that you have coming up for this coming year or the next 5 years, maybe?
Okay. When I got into the university, I've been given an autonomy to design my own module. So I'm in the process of designing a module and on how to teach with technology and how to design a module that is authentic, that speaks to the needs of the society. I mean, I've just come from the education system. I know the kinds of skills that teachers need. And then I'm trying to develop a model that will also help other universities and other people that are in teacher professional development on how to develop teacher professional development on the topic of teaching with technology, but in an authentic way. How to ensure that it meets the needs of the teachers into the system. So it's currently my journey. I want to develop into that sphere, so that I can help more universities to start looking at teacher development training in a different way. Because the problem that we are having teachers who are not that fully competent into teaching with technology is because they were not well trained at the university level. So that's the reason I'm developing something that will help into capacitating pre-service teachers with technological skills, going forward into the in-service teachers as well. But I'm also on my journey into my PhD. I want to be called a doctor as well. I want to complete my PhD and then, and have my NGO growing more into all parts of the country and and other countries as well. And I would also want to see it operating in the United States as well and other African countries.
Okay. I love that, man. So I'm guessing that chuckle when I asked the question was because you already got your future planned out. That's excellent, my friend. That's excellent.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. So tell me, Linford, how can the people find you? How can they get more involved with you? You mentioned Facebook. I know you're on LinkedIn. Is there any other place that we can find you at?
I'm almost everywhere, but I'm more more active. So if you really want to catch up with the things that I do, rather follow me on Facebook. It's Linford Molaodi. I'm Linford Molaodi everywhere.
Okay.
Linford, Linford, and then Molaodi, Molaodi. On Twitter, on Instagram, but in terms of my professional and community development work, my Facebook page is always kept up to date.
All right. I love it. Well, I just added you on Facebook as we were having this conversation. So excuse me being a little distracted, but I'm so impressed by you, Linford. I'm excited about the work that you're doing to train the teachers, because I feel like, at the end of the day, our teachers are spending the most time with students. They're spending more time than anybody else with the next generation. So if we can get them to feel confident and expand their capacity in the classroom, it's ultimately going to expand their capacity for the next generation that's coming to take care of the world and change our lives and change everybody else's life involved. So I thank you so much for taking this time to join me all the way from South Africa, Linford Molaodi, and thank you for listening to the Dash podcast right now. This is a very special episode, and I can't wait for you to share it with everybody that needs to hear it. If you know a teacher, an educator, a principal, please go ahead and take this episode and share it with them or tag it in the episode right now. We will see you next time. This is The Dash.